So today I'm here with Mr. Dimitriou, CEO of ImmuPharma. Nice to meet you, Mr. Dimitriou.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Mr. Dimitriou, could you please give us a general overview about your company?
Yes, of course, and thanks for the opportunity. So ImmuPharma plc is a group which is based in London, UK, with operations in Switzerland and France. And we focus on niche therapeutic areas with drugs which, if they succeed, would have a blockbuster sales potential. And what we also do, and that's part of the interesting thing we believe in terms of our business model, is to avoid early stage research, which takes a long time and it's also very risky. And we do that with an exclusive collaboration which we have with the CNRS, which is France's leading research institution and also the biggest fundamental research institution in Europe. And they have a budget of about 3.3 billion euros and about 30,000 people. So because they do a lot of basic research, this allows us to avoid having our own expenses and labs, and basically we work with them. So we identify compounds and take them forward to development and then remunerate the CNRS with payments after we receive payments in the future from partners.
Mr. Dimitriou, which drugs are currently in development and in which phases each?
We have 5 drugs altogether, 5 lead drugs, and also 2 platform technologies. The lead drug, which we have the most advanced stage, is called Lupuzor, and that's for a disease which is not so well known called lupus. And that now has got the approval to go into phase 3 from the FDA. So phase 3 is the last testing stage. Then we have a drug for cancer, which has just finished a phase 1/2A study in patients, in cancer patients. And then we have 3 other drugs which are at the stage of preclinical development, and our platform technologies are basically at the discovery stage.
Drugs are going through different phases. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. In pharmaceuticals, as people know, the time to first of all discover and secondly develop a drug is very lengthy, and the risk is also very high, especially at the early stages. So in drug development, you start from the preclinical phase where you discover the drug and you do many tests before you go into human testing in clinical trials. And in clinical trials, there is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So Lupuzor now is at the beginning of phase 3, which is effectively the last testing phase. So the probability of success obviously goes up as phases go forward. So on average from the market, some statistics which I remember is that the drug within phase 1 has a chance of probably 25% of making it to the market, within phase 2 maybe 35%, and then within phase 3 about 65%.
Lupuzor was already granted the approval to go into phase 3. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. Lupuzor was given the okay from the FDA, which is the world's leading regulatory authority, to go into the last testing phase, which is phase 3. And actually on top of that, the FDA gave to Lupuzor the approval to go into phase 3 with what is called an SPA. An SPA is a special protocol assessment. So in this way, it's effectively the commitment of the FDA to give approval, assuming you have met the endpoints which were agreed. In addition, the FDA granted Lupuzor what is called fast track status. So with the fast track status, drugs get approved much faster than in a normal review phase.
You just recently got the rights back for Lupuzor from your licensed partner. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we had a deal with a large specialty US company called Cephalon, and as part of the deal we received from them about $45 million. Part of it we still have in the bank and keeps us safe, and that was part of one of the biggest deals in Europe at the time in 2008 and 2009. The total milestone payments were 500 million, and that was in addition to royalties which were tiering up to the high end in terms of royalties in the industry. And Lupuzor, fortunately or unfortunately for them and us, was acquired by a large company which is focusing a lot on generics called Teva. And Teva Pharmaceuticals basically became Cephalon. And because of a license deal and the agreement which we had in place, there were 2 clauses which effectively came into the picture. One of them was a non-compete clause, and the other one was a change of control provision. So we agreed with Cephalon that we would take the rights back from Lupuzor.
Mr. Dimitriou, how are you going to market Lupuzor?
And that's an interesting question. Lupuzor is a niche product, so the competition for drugs in this area is very, very small. And therefore, you don't require a big sales force to promote this drug globally because of the high need. So ImmuPharma has two choices. One is to retain rights until commercialization and effectively become a large company, pass a very big inflection point, like many US biotechs when Lupuzor is at the end, ready for market. Or potentially we could do a deal with a license partner, like Cephalon, whereby they take the worldwide rights, complete development, and then market globally themselves in return for royalties to ImmuPharma.
How do you personally view the market potential for Lupuzor?
Well, lupus is an area where there are a large number of patients and not many drugs which are available for the disease. As an example, what we have found from various market research sources and also what many analysts have said is that there are around 1.5 million patients in the G7 markets, so in the US, the 5 European ones, and Japan. That does not mean that the rest of Europe and the rest of the world and China and India also do not have potential. But typically, Big Pharma especially tends to make a lot of the profits in these 7 markets. So just as a quick brief, the expectation for the pricing of Lupuzor on a price per year per patient is about $15,000. So if you multiply 1.5 million patients times $15,000 per patient, the market is enormous. We will not get all the market, but even with a small share, the expectations for the sales forecast for Lupuzor are about $2 billion per year.
You also mentioned that you got a cancer drug in development. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, a cancer drug is of a very novel mechanism. It has a very novel target. It targets a couple of nuclear proteins at the surface of cells, and basically it has a dual mechanism of action. So what it does is that it inhibits proliferation and also the growth of new blood vessels. So the mechanism is very novel. The drug has passed clinical development and has already been tested in humans. We closed just recently a phase 1/2A study in France, which was done in 3 centers in France, and it was a safety study. So we believe that it has met the endpoints because no toxicity was shown, and about 20% of the patients were stabilized. All these patients were progressing the disease and had metastasis. So I think there's definitely a good hint there.
What would be the next step for the cancer drug?
We have discovered now formulation of the drug in nanoparticles, very, very small particles, which seems to be a lot more efficacious. So even though this one has shown very promising results, we plan to do another study with the new formulation, which we will do most likely in one of the biggest hospitals in Europe for cancer, in Belgium, in Brussels. And that should start in the next few weeks or months, we hope. And we expect that this will be followed by a bigger phase 2, which we could start at the end of the year.
Could you please give us an overview about your financial situation?
Yes, thankfully because of the deal with Cephalon, we recorded quite a lot of revenues a few years ago. A lot of that we still have in the bank. So currently we believe we have about 3 years worth of cash in the bank. So assuming we don't even do a deal, we can easily continue for another 3 years of operations. And in terms of numbers, we reported in the last accounts, in our financial results for last year, that we have about £12 million in the bank, and we are spending about £4 million a year.
So that's the current cash burn rate?
Correct.
Mr. Dimitriou, can you give us some background information about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm a graduate scientist, so I started in the University of London many years ago. I did biochemistry at King's College and then pathology at the Imperial Medical School. And I started my career in the pharmaceutical industry in Sandoz, which is now Novartis, in marketing. Then I spent about 8 years in different positions in Procter & Gamble, primarily in marketing and also business development. Then I moved to SmithKline Beecham in 1996 as Associate Director of Worldwide Business Development. So business development in the pharmaceutical industry is the group that does effectively deals, primarily licensing deals with other companies. So my job was to try to identify interesting compounds from other sources to bring into SmithKline Beecham. And I became director and the senior director and stayed after the merger. And through one of my deals, I have become friends with one of my colleagues currently. And we started ImmuPharma together. So I'm one of the founders of ImmuPharma.
So it was a pleasure having you here. Thanks for the interview, Mr. Dimitriou.
It was also my pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.